Here's how to factor a trinomial in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Notice that this time our trinomial has a number other than 1 in front of x squared. So our first example is 5x squared plus 13x plus 6. Remember, when I didn't have a number in front of x squared, I was just looking for two numbers that multiplied to c and added to b. Well, this is going to be a little more complicated because I actually do have a number other than 1 in front of x squared. So now I'm going to be looking for two numbers that multiply to whatever a times c is. So in this case, I need to do 5 times 6, which is 30. So I'm going to be looking for two numbers that multiply to 30, and the same two numbers have to add up to b, which is 13. So there's actually a lot of factors of 30. There's 1 in 30, 2 in 15, 3 in 10, 4 doesn't go in, and 5 in 6. So looking at those numbers, do any of those make you think of 13? Well, 3 and 10 do. And actually this is a little bit easier since they're both positive. Both of the numbers I'm looking for are positive, so both of these are going to be positive. Now, I don't just throw these numbers into parentheses the way I did when there was not a number in front of x squared. I actually have to use that 3 and that 10 to rewrite my 13 in the middle. So I'll keep my 5x squared, and instead of 13x, I'm going to write it as plus 3x plus 10x, and then my plus 6. So instead of 13x in the middle, I have a 3x plus a 10x. Now I have 4 terms, and the best way to deal with this is factoring by grouping. So I group my first two terms and my last two terms, and out of the first set of pink parentheses, I'll take out a greatest common factor, which in this case is x, and that leaves me with 5x plus 3. And out of my second set of parentheses, I'll take out a greatest common factor, which is going to be 2. And that will leave me with 5x plus 3. So one of my final factors is going to be the one that repeats, 5x plus 3. And my other factor takes the x in front and the plus 2 in front and puts those together in the parentheses. So my factored form is the quantity 5x plus 3 times the quantity x plus 2. Factoring a trinomial that starts with a number other than 1 is a little more complicated because you have to do this whole factoring by grouping thing, but it always works if the term is factorable. And let's take a look at another example here. 3x squared minus 10x plus 8. Again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to whatever a times c is. A times c is 3 times 8, or 24. And then the same two numbers have to add up to b, which in this case is negative 10. 24 also has a lot of factor pairs. 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So do any of those make us think of 10? Actually, there's two possibilities. There's both 2 and 12 and 4 and 6. But notice that when I multiply the numbers, I have to get a positive, which means they're either both going to be positive or both going to be negative. And then when I add the numbers, I get a negative, which means one or both of them have to be negative. So I think we're going to have to go with, I believe it's 4 and 6 on this one. So if I have a negative 4 and a negative 6 and a negative 4 and a negative 6, yes, that works. Negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. Negative 4 minus 6 is a negative 10. So now I'm going to use those two numbers to rewrite my negative 10 in the middle here. So 3x squared minus 4x minus 6x plus 8. So I rewrote negative 10x as negative 4x minus 6x. Now we want to factor by grouping, so I'll put parentheses around the first two, parentheses around the last two, and don't forget to put the plus up there because now I'm going to think of this in terms of plus a negative 6. take a greatest common factor out of the first set of parentheses, which I think is an x, 3x minus 4. Out of the second set of parentheses, let's take out a greatest common factor of 2, but since it starts with a negative, let's do a negative 2, and that's going to leave me with a 3x minus 4. So half of my answer is the repeated factor of 3x minus 4. The other binomial takes the x and the negative 2 and puts those together in parentheses. So the factored form of 3x squared minus 10x plus 8 is 3x minus 4 times the quantity x minus 2.